From a certain perspective, the Venom symbiote is really just the world's biggest Marvel Universe fan, who's just really, really clingy. What started as a wardrobe upgrade has become one of the best traveled characters in the Marvel Universe. After Peter Parker learned the dangers of buying off the rack in the Battleworld gift shop and had to ring a bell to get rid of the Venom symbiote, it's gotten around. It was only a matter of time before it would make its way back to space. Here's why. You never forget your first love, and for the Venom symbiote, the first love was Peter Parker. It all started as a suggestion from a reader to give Spider-Man a suit that he wouldn't have to keep sewing back together. This being a Marvel comic, you have to take the good with the bad, and sometimes the bad is harrowing. In this case, that meant that the suit was feeding off of Peter's adrenaline and bringing out his most aggressive nature, which meant more finger guns than you'd imagine. The Venom symbiote didn't take the breakup well and found himself another person with a beef with Parker and became a signature villain for the wall crawler throughout the 90s. Eventually, though, someone tipped the symbiote to the idea that there are plenty of fish in the sea, and if Peter's not that into him, maybe someone else will be. This led to a whistle-stop tour of the Marvel Universe where it would be easier to list the characters who haven't hosted the Venom symbiote in one way or another. Meanwhile, Peter Parker has had no shortage of people, beings, entities, aliens, classmates, and co-workers that would volunteer to make Peter's life hard, either swinging from buildings or just getting to class. One of the first people stepping up to make Peter's life miserable is the all-star football player and sometimes bully Flash Thompson. Just like how Peter has grown from that awkward teen with spider powers into a slightly less awkward adult with spider powers, Flash Thompson grew up and eventually took his athleticism and some lessons from his former target for bullying to the armed forces, becoming both a war hero and suffering the loss of his legs. Enter Project Rebirth 2.0. Never a good sign when your rebirth needs a rebirth. The government got its hands on the Venom symbiote from Mac Gargan, otherwise known as Scorpion, another character with a spider beef. The idea behind Project Rebirth was to find a way to have all the benefits of bonding with the symbiote with none of the murderous rage that also comes with the symbiote. To that end, they developed blockers that allowed the host to retain control over the symbiote while joined, and Flash Thompson was their man. It's not just a coincidental pairing. Flash and the Venom symbiote have a similar relationship with Peter Parker. While Flash saw Peter in high school as a target, he had a lot of love for Spider-Man. You can see how that can get awkward. Flash was so obsessed with Spider-Man that he even dressed up as Spider-Man, only to get kidnapped by Dr. Doom. Eventually, Gwen Stacy would get the two to get along, and Flash would find some of the things he admired in Spider-Man in Peter Parker. Imagine. The Venom symbiote likewise has both menaced and admired Peter Parker and Spider-Man. They were a match made in a horrifying science lab. It worked for the most part, with the symbiote creating legs for the newly combined Agent Venom. Naturally, it wasn't exactly peace, love, and pancakes for the new pair. There were plenty of encounters with spider foes and spider pals, even a run-in with spider foe Otto Octavius, pretending to be spider pal Spider-Man. Flash as Agent Venom did his fair share of joining and deciding against joining, fighting everyone from Kraven to Mephisto. You remember Mephisto? He's the one we keep thinking is going to show up and stuff. Maybe the real Mephisto is the friends we made along the way. All of this, including Thompson's struggles to maintain control over the symbiote, eventually landed Flash a spot on the Secret Avengers. The problem was, Spider-Man was also an Avenger. This creates an awkward HR situation. It's hard to say your symbiote is over to X when it still wears the giant white spider design. The solution to the problem was to give Agent Venom an ambassadorship, sort of. Captain America felt that the Avengers needed to have a better connection to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and so sent Agent Venom with the group on loan. In a way, it seems like a perfect plan. On Earth, Agent Venom was just going to keep running into spider foes and ex-hosts and other people who just want some of that sweet symbiote power, complicating his life. But in space, who's going to have any connection to the symbiote? Naturally, the flaw in that plan is that the symbiote comes from space. The problem being that the symbiote was a little cagey about what that meant exactly. The symbiote was more focused on Peter Parker, and what was Peter Parker doing right now, do you think? And do you think Peter Parker is thinking about me? You know, that sort of stuff. The first thing he found out was that people weren't keen on people with symbiotes. Like any proper Earthling, he got in between the Skrull-Kree war with the Skrulls trying to steal the symbiote for themselves. Since space was the same old with people attacking him and trying to steal the symbiote, he tried to thumb it back to Earth only to find that the symbiote was kicking things into overdrive. While trying to get someone to explain why everyone was so twitchy about the symbiote, it took control and attacked Gamora, eventually going on a whirlwind tour of the Guardians until it settled on Drax to defeat the team and take over the ship. The destination? Klyntar. Thomas Wolfe said you can't go home again, but that's in a more rhetorical sense. That the home you left will never really be the home you return to because, like you, it's grown and aged and changed and you'll never return to that point in the past. In a literal sense, though, you can totally return home, and you should. Your mom would like to see you and your childhood dog misses you. For the Venom symbiote, Klyntar was home. In this case, though, it turns out the Venom symbiote had done a lot more changing than Klyntar or the other Klyntarians. Eventually, we'd learn the history of the symbiotes, known as the Klyntarians, is both complex and central to the development of the Marvel Universe. It involves a being named Null, a slick living sword, a beheaded celestial, and even inspiring a certain god butcher heading to a Thor movie near you. While Flash and the Guardians wouldn't learn the whole journey of the Venom symbiote, which involves Kree experimentation and some less than savory hosts, they did learn that the Klyntarians were not the raging murder monsters that they kind of assumed they would be based on, Venom and Carnage. In the argument over nature versus nurture in the Klyntarians, nurture matters a lot. As they explained it to the Guardians, they were meant to bond with physically and mentally robust people to act as peacekeepers across the universe. While things turned out to be more complicated than that in the end, they were able to reabsorb the Venom symbiote and help it get over its issues with its earlier hosts that had set him on the eat first, ask questions later path. The Venom symbiote, now certified not homicidal for the moment, rejoined Flash with a new lease on life. You're nobody in the Marvel Universe until you're an agent of something. SHIELD, SWORD, Atlas, Smash. Agent Venom stepped up his Agent of status. With his new, more powerful symbiote, he was settling things right across the cosmos with his robot pal, 803, thanks in part to the symbiote's new sensitivity to cosmos in general. So Agent Venom became an agent of the cosmos. That's a pretty slick title. Nothing quite whips up the rage of someone like a space pirate like thwarting his evil plan. Space pirate Mercurio had set up machines to turn livable worlds into unlivable worlds, as you do. When Venom undid that, he made a persistent enemy, who of course wanted in on the whole symbiote thing. To make things extra complicated, the symbiote developed the ability to just manifest without a host. One thing leads to another, Mercurio gets a hold of the symbiote and tries some of that sweet symbiosis before Flash was able to take back the symbiote, who, of course, having bonded with another maniac, ended up resetting that whole, nice sort of thing the Klyntarians had done. We all know what happens next: massive rampage, general fear of the symbiote, even a trial. It turns out that the whole refreshing of the Venom symbiote didn't take because, a while back, someone had, taking a slice of his tongue and cloned it into the cloned symbiote Mania. People are crazy for that symbiote magic. And gross. Needing to get back together with that portion of his tongue, how often do you get to say that? And a bit of an issue with hell marks from his run-ins with Mephisto ended Venom's adventures in space. Imagine finding out that you're the black sheep of an entire species. For all that time, Venom has been going from host to host thinking that eating folks is just how he is, and then he meets his people and they're all, ew, no. That has to be an awkward homecoming.